Finally wrapped up our Will Our Faith Make roster series. I know you guys did not get Portland, Toronto. I could not give you that in good faith because, baby, your guess is good as mine about who was going to be on that team. But rosters are in the process of being finalized. They have to be done by 5 p.m. today. So someone said, Justin, it'll be great to go back and look at how right were we about our predictions. So we're going to call this Did Our Faith Make roster? So we're going to do half right now, and then not everybody has narrowed down to their 12-person roster. So we'll do the other half tomorrow. Let's start off with the Dallas Wings. Okay, when it comes to Dallas, we were, for the most part, correct about what this roster looked like. This is who we said we thought that they were going to go with for their 11. Without a shadow of a doubt, they will be on the team. Obviously, we have all 5 of our protected contracts: Alana, Arike, Maddie, Jess, and Awalk. The next players that he did list was Paige, Zaza, Odyssey, Lee, and AZ Fudd. And then, like I said, they also threw in Alicia Clark. Now, that last spot was a toss-up. I said with the 12th person, I was not quite sure who they were going to pick. I did think Amy had a strong possibility of making the final roster. I know JJ was coming back from injury, so that would make me a little bit hesitant about what they were going to do with her. But ultimately, they ended up going with JJ. But I'll give myself an A- because I did get JJ wrong, and I did think that they were going to go with Amy. So A- on the Dallas Ring roster. Let's talk about Chicago Sky. Now, with Chicago, I think I'm going to give myself a B, not a B-, and a B+, just a B, because baseline foundation was correct. This is what I said originally. We'll be here without a shadow of a doubt. We have 6 players. They're all on protected contract: Azare, Skylar, Elizabeth, Courtney, Dejanay, and Rachel. Then on my rookie scale contracts, I'm going to also add in Camilla, JC, and Rakia. Next player that is a no-brainer is going to be Gabriel Jaquez. Now that leaves us 2 spots left. And we were correct about the 10 and then also who would be on the chopping block. I thought Maddie and Haley had a really good chance of making roster, but I did say if they were going to waive somebody, it would be those 2 that are on the chopping block. I would say outside the door is going to be Haley Van Lith. I did not put Haley Van Lith into the definite because had not a rough rookie season, but it's coming off an injury. You never know. If somebody was going to get somebody to get on roster, you're going to have to take Haley's spot. But if somebody was trying to get on roster and get that 12th spot, they're going to have to take it from Maddie. And we were right because they end up waiving both of those players. They brought in Tosh Cloud. I think if they weren't going to bring in Tosh, Haley would have made final roster. But because they brought in Tosh, Haley became expendable, like we communicated before, was always going to be on the chopping block. So ended up waiving Haley, bringing in Tosh. Now, this is where I was wrong. Shout out to Sydney Taylor. She's a hooper. She came in and got her spot. Give ourselves a B when it comes to Chicago Sky. Then we're going to move to the Aces. Now, Aces aren't final, but this is what it's looking like right now. I'm going to give myself actually an A on the Aces right now. Theirs was kind of cut and dry, as in there wasn't a lot of people invited to camp, so it wasn't that difficult to predict. But this is what I had originally said I thought the Aces were going to do. You can already probably anticipate who's going to be on final roster. Of course, our 7 players who are on protected contracts will be on final roster. So, Asia, Jackie, Chelsea, Jewel, Melissa, and Stephanie Talbot. And then last but not least, Dana Evans will all be on the roster when everything is said and done. Then we move to the unprotected. And yeah, I'm pretty sure all those players will also be on final roster if I'm a betting woman. So KB, Ken will be on the final roster. Cheyenne Parker Tyus, and also Bree Turner. Honestly, the entire roster, I knew Janiyah was going to be a toss-up. Also, option, if it is going to be one of the rookies, it's probably going to be Janiyah Barker, just depending on if the Aces were interested in signing someone else who was waived from another camp, which I thought they were going to do. So maybe I'll give us an A-, because it does look like Janiyah will be on active roster when the season starts. They did end up waiving Jordan Obi, and I think they're going to use those 2 development spots to add in somebody that they have their eyes on at a different camp. Now we're going to move on to the Washington Mystics. So I'm like 50-50 on Washington's roster, right? Honestly, baseline, I had a good baseline of what they were going to do. This is what I had predicted. Shakira and Michaela will be on final roster. No ifs and buts about it. Then, of course, Sony, Kiki, and Georgia will also be on final roster. Then I'm going to go to draft night. I can say with confidence that Lauren, Angela, and Cody will all be on final roster when everything is said and done. I believe one of those spots will be given to Alex Wilson. She will be the backup point guard behind Georgia.
Then I also think Lucy Olson will take one of the spots.
Where I went wrong, this is the conversation around that backup PG. They had Alex Wilson and they had Roy Harmon. Now, 5% of third rounders make final roster in the WNBA, so it's very, very difficult. So I took that in consideration of my analysis, and I also took into consideration they had 6 picks in the WNBA draft, which also is a double whammy on top of Roy being drafted in the 3rd round. I knew it was going to be a tough camp for her to get out of, but shout out to Rory Harmon, who looks like she will be on the final roster for the Washington Mystics. What Washington did that I did not expect is that they kept both Alex and Rory. I also was off about Cass. I thought Cass, just again, there's so many young kids on the Washington Mystics roster. I thought if they were going to have to give somebody a development contract out of the rookies they drafted, obviously I thought it was going to be Rory or it was going to be Cass, but it looks like Cass also made active roster. So I think Cass must have been really out there hooping and ended up taking what we thought was going to be Madison Scott's roster spot. So I'm going to give myself a C on this prediction. Okay, so let's move on to the Minnesota Lynx, where I honestly, even though we weren't 100% right, I kind of do want to give myself an A, because this Minnesota roster was kind of difficult because there was a lot of international players, a lot of players, this is their first time at the WNBA, and a lot of players I was unfamiliar with. So I want to give myself an A- on this one for sure. This is what my original thoughts were in terms of who would be on the Minnesota Lynx roster. Nafisa, Courtney, K-Mac, Natasha Howard, Nia Coffey, and Dorka Juhas. I think for sure Kosu will be on this team. And then when I moved to my drafted, of course, Olivia Miles. I thought they were going to give a spot to Sailor. I thought she performed well, and I was just looking at her minutes, but they end up waiving her. We were able to predict 3, though, of the players that it's looking like they will be on the active roster tomorrow. I have 4 players that I think stuck out to me that I would keep your eyes on that we may see with the Minnesota Lynx this year. And that is going to be Sailor Poffenbarger, Emma Deliere, Hamzova impressed me. And then I also think she's currently with international responsibilities, but keep your eyes on Emma Chechova. Those 3 individuals, it does look like they will be on the Minnesota Lynx on starting tomorrow. So yeah, considering the variables we were dealt with, I'm going to give myself an A on this one for sure. The last team that I'm going to give myself an A about in this video is going to be the Indiana Fever. We were able to get this roster completely correct in terms of who we predict will be on their active roster. Kelsey, Aaliyah, Mo, Lexi, Sophie, Maisha Hines-Allen, Caitlin, Ty, Michaela Timpson, Damaris Dantes, and then from my rookie pile, I'm going to pull out Raven Johnson. Now, when it comes to that last spot on the roster, I do think who's looking at it from outside, right outside the door, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. So A+ when it comes to the Indiana Fever's roster.